welcome to Firefighter, a story about New Haven's Bravest, Chapter 9, You're Never Too Old to Learn. My name is Lieutenant Donald Wilson. I'm the Director of Community Relations and Public Fire Education. With me in the studio this evening is Janie Charles, Executive Director of Tower 1 and Tower East, and Mr. Abe Flax, a member of the Mayor's Commission on Aging. Good evening.
Good evening.
Ms. Holmes, statistically, fire impacts on the very young and the very old, more so than any other age group. Do you feel that your facility offers your residents a safe environment in which to live?
Yes, we do. Statistically speaking, again, if one were to interview elderly residents, you'd find that the main reason for coming into elderly housing, congregate housing, is for security. Therefore, we know that some reasons of security, be they psychological or physical, is of utmost importance. Therefore, the actual fabrics and the construction, our buildings are made of concrete masonry. We have two units. One is a 217-unit, 21-story high-rise, and the other is a 150-unit, 12-story high-rise. Both have used fabrics, materials, and been designed to offer optimum safety.
Very good. Mr. Flax, as a member of the Mayor's Commission on Aging and also a resident of this housing complex, how do you feel about that?
Well, at the houses, the security of containing fire is very good for reasons. We have fire drills where Ms. Holmes comes up on each floor and explains to us what we should do, what we shouldn't do for our own good and for the sake of others on the floor. And mainly we try to help each other on the floor, and that's the reason for having the fire drills every so often.
Let me ask you both. This question's up for grabs. Does the fire department interact with you in any of these plans? Do they interact with regard to an evacuation plan, or do they have any public fire education forums at your facility?
I'd like to respond to that. Yes, we have been working with the fire department ever since our building opened. The first building opened 12 years ago. And before we even occupied, the plans were gone over with the fire department. Our fire procedures, our fire drill that he alluded to, was developed in conjunction with the fire department, so that they've had direct impact upon our training. In addition, people like yourself have come in over the years to do direct in-service training for both our residents and staff. This is very important that the procedure be developed by the fire department, because we want to make sure that, first of all, it's accurate, and secondly, that we're not in conflict with anything that your department, which are in fact the experts, would have in terms of evacuation process. I don't have to tell you that you've told us not to evacuate, and that's very important, so that we stress the education more than evacuation, prevention more than evacuation.
Very good. Yes, we try to perpetuate the idea that reaction based on preparation is what it's all about. I guess we sort of preempted the next question that I wanted to ask you, and that was that a building may afford its occupants all the fire safety features that are available on the market today, but would you agree or disagree that the necessary ingredient that is lacking in many cases, the apathy on the part of management or the residents living within a complex? Would you agree with me that you need to bring these ingredients together to have a complex, an overall fulfillment of that goal?
I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think out of every tragedy, some good occurs, and the good which occurred out of the Las Vegas tragedies, the fire tragedies, have made us all more fire conscious. As an organization, we've been extremely fire conscious from the beginning. I alluded earlier to the fact that we were conscious of this in terms of selection of our building materials. In the interior, in the inside of the apartment, we have fire rated doors. We have fire safety retardant draperies and carpeting. However, I think up into the Las Vegas situation, people kind of took that for granted. They knew they were coming into an elderly high-rise, therefore they just kind of took it for granted that all the best equipment would be there, safety retardant materials. But now I find people coming in want to know if in fact we do have a fire safety plan, do we have fire safety education, and I have always personally taken care of this, and I go on each floor at least twice a year, and we have mock fire drills, we have fire education, especially emphasizing, since we're high-rise, the importance of not getting into an elevator in the event of a fire. I found, though, that since the Las Vegas fires, that people really pay much more attention to what I'm saying than they did in the past. It was almost like it couldn't happen to us. That always happened elsewhere. But since the sporadic fires throughout the country and high-rise, and of course they got more publicity. I'm sure that high-rise fires are nothing new. They're just the media is capitalizing on them more, publicizing them more. Therefore, this has been very beneficial to us because the residents are much more aware of what's going on and much more sensitive.
Very good. Mr. Flax, first I'd like to congratulate you on your new appointment to the Mayor's Commission on Aging. And secondly, I'd like to ask you, as a resident of this occupancy, do you concur with your executive director?
Most highly. By having the fire drills, and I think the residents seeing the fire department officials come through, explaining to us. It's like going to school all over again. We're learning. We might be old, but never too old to learn. And when we learn for our own self, our own sake. The main thing we're learning is we have to watch out for ourselves and others on the same floor. That's one of the most important things.
Very good. Mr. Flack, again, I would like to say to you, some of the most common causes of fires in the senior citizen community, according to fire department records, are careless smoking and careless cooking. Would you care to elaborate on that as a resident of a complex?
Well, in smoking, I'm not a smoker, but careless smoking is because it isn't the equipment in the building, it's sometimes the furniture that they have, the bed they have, or the couch could get on fire. Now, if they use that, if they use smoking with more care, they wouldn't have so many careless fires. And as far as pots and pans, we are taught, we are shown by movies how to handle it in case a pan does get on fire. And being that I'm in the food line myself, we know that it could cause a lot of accidents if you don't know how to handle a burning pot.
Absolutely. Ms. Holmes, I'd like to throw that out to you also. Would you like to care to expound on that?
Yes. Your department has shown us some really worthwhile films, easily understood, and that's why we have you to come in periodically to just constantly reinforce the idea. And we have an in-house newsletter which is called The Building Buzz, and Buzz advocates, first of all, non-smoking for health and safety reasons, and also just as a constant reminder. And this is what we find that people just need, of any age, and particularly the elderly, need constant reminding of the dangers, the inherent dangers of falling asleep, so that while something is cooking, so that we try to emphasize to people, if in fact you are going to cook, don't rest while your food is cooking. There's an old saying that a watched pot never boils, but we know that that's not true, that you can in fact cook and watch it.
Absolutely. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to go to the video segment of the program and cover some parts of the program that you just alluded to with regard to the behaviors of careless cooking and careless smoking. We'll be right back after this segment.
Share our experiences. I would want any friend of mine to share the experience I had last December.
I started to repair and repaint the kids' electric trains. I was using paint thinner. Well, 2 nights before Christmas Eve, I was taking a break, lit my pipe. The vapors ignited, and there was a terrible explosion and fire. Saved the self, but the whole set of trains was just ruined.
Henry, I don't think I ever saw such a disappointed man as you last Christmas. After all that work, accidents are something we just assume won't happen. Or if they do, that somebody else is going to be there to take care of things. Like Martha Reynolds with her fireplace. She says she always assumed David would be there if a log rolled out or sparks landed on her furniture. Well, David passed away last summer. Now Martha's learning the hard way that she can handle these things herself. After her carpet caught fire last fall, she's become a lot more careful. That fire screen covers her fireplace every time now.
Any open fires, a fireplace, candles on the dinner table, are invitations to an accident. There's nothing romantic about candlelight if those candles set your room on fire. Smoking is the #1 cause of fire and burn injuries among senior citizens. #1. I would urge those of you who do smoke to get large, deep ashtrays. A single dropped match or ash in a stuffed chair can smolder for a long time. The dense smoke it generates can be deadly. If it bursts into flame, the person in it usually burns too. Do I have to tell a group like this not to smoke in bed?
Oh, probably not, Chief Matthews. We wouldn't take that risk. But there is something else I would like to mention that we might not think of otherwise. Last Thursday, I was waiting for a friend to pick me up on the way to the drama club rehearsal. And I decided to take my medication ahead of time so I wouldn't have to think about it later. Well, I simply never made the connection that my medicine tended to make me sleepy. And then I sat down and waited and lit a cigarette and fell sound asleep. When the doorbell rang, the cigarette was lying in my lap.
I know what Flo's talking about. My brother Fred used to react the same way after every drink he took. He burned his clothes so often that he finally decided to give up smoking. Should have given up drinking too, but that's another story. I don't drink myself and hardly ever take medicine, but I find out I wake up drowsier than I used to. I have a devil of a time getting moving in the morning. It scares me sometimes when I'm starting my fire and dropping matches.
Older people find it harder to get moving in the morning. As a matter of fact, you'd probably be interested to know that the greatest percentage of fire accidents which involve folks your age occur between 7 and 10 in the morning. Forewarned is forearmed, my dad used to tell me.
Oh my.
The poor fellow who was in these clothes when they caught fire wasn't forewarned enough. The clothing you and I wear is the skin outside our skin. When it burns, we burn. Now, those burns might only injure a young man or woman, but those same burns could be fatal for a child or an elderly person. That's why it's important to buy fire-resistant clothing whenever we have the opportunity to do so.
Please stay tuned. We'll be back after this brief message.
Million Americans have diabetes. About 5 million don't know it. Diabetes is a disease which deprives our bodies of energy. Symptoms include excessive thirst, urination, hunger, weight loss, or drowsiness, or tingling numb sensations in the extremities. Diabetes damages nerves and blood vessels, causes heart and kidney failure, gangrene, and stroke. It's the leading cause of blindness among people over 45, the third leading cause of death by disease. There's still no cure, but with a careful balance of diet, medication, exercise, and insulin, many diabetics lead virtually normal, even strenuous lives. Life is becoming easier for diabetics with medical advances like this simple blood test for immediate monitoring of sugar-insulin balance. If you're a diabetic, get a handle on it. Follow your doctor's advice. Diabetes needn't take you for a ride.
Ms. Holmes, Mr. Flax, we have just viewed a film showing some of the behaviors that we would like reflected in the senior citizens in your complexes. Some of the things that were shown were, in the event of a fire, flight is not always better than flight. One should, if they're in a good environment, stay there. If you're in your apartment and you were to smell smoke, if you open the door, we have a natural fear of fire, but not of smoke. Smoke is the killer. We would tell all the residents, and I'm sure you've told them, that stay in your apartment. Don't traverse through the smoke. Stay in your apartment, cover the base of the door with a wet towel, and to try to stay in the safe environment. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with that. However, again, that's why it's so important that your office has been working with us and developing these techniques, because the more we emphasize them, the more we reinforce them, the more that the people will be likely to do that in the event of an emergency. Because as you say, our natural instinct, our natural impulse is to run because we're frightened. However, by constantly hearing this over and over again, we're hoping in the event of a fire, then perhaps they will penetrate and people will remember what to do.
Good. Mr. Flax, you're never too old to learn, is that correct?
That's right.
You've said to me before, and I'll say back to you, that if you were to have a fire in your home, on a kitchen stove or anything like that, and your clothing were to become involved in fire, what would your reaction be?
On the clothing?
Yes.
First thing I would do is cold water.
Okay. In the event that water wasn't readily available, what about the process of stop, drop, and roll?
Stop, drop, roll, get a blanket, wrap it around you. Kill the fire.
Absolutely.
Kill the
Suffocate the fire.
Suffocate the fire first.
Some of the messages that we advocate seem to be redundantly expounded upon, but we found that fire safety is that kind of a message. You have to keep bringing it to the forefront of the person's mind to which you want to penetrate. And by going out and doing this kind of fire safety in senior citizens facilities, that has been impressed. It has been impressed upon me that is the way in which the message is delivered, and it's received by the recipient in a repetitive manner. Let's talk about fighting a fire in a senior citizens complex. We don't advocate that the actual residents fight fires, but you have made readily available to them fire extinguishers at different points in the hallways. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What kind of instruction have you given them with regard to using those?
Okay, we have told them that if it's let me just back up a minute and say these are all-purpose fire extinguishers. So
by that you mean ABC, and that you can use them on paper, rags, and whatever else?
That's right.
Oil? Okay.
And we have told them that if it's a small fire and they can't smother it, it's obviously best to try to cover it up or suffocate it. And they remember the drop, roll, stop, drop, and roll.
Yes.
Right. I almost said shake, rattle, and roll.
Oh.
Anyway, and they remember that. And some of them say, well, I get it mixed up, but as long as they try to smother it. And but if it's at all getting out of hand, before it even looks like it's getting out of hand, we try to remind them to get help right away. It's just so important to do that, to not wait until the fire gets out of hand.
Right. Again, reaction based on good preparation.
Exactly.
That's what we want to perpetuate.
That's why we've been told and instructed and told over and over again. We have an alarm on every floor. In fact, we have 2 alarms, one on either end of the hall. That if you cannot control the fire, first thing you do is call for help. And the only way to call for help, pull the alarm, you know the fire department is coming. If it is in your apartment, get out of your apartment. But if it's not in your apartment, stay in your apartment until help comes.
Very good. Ms. Holmes, an alarm is sounded in one of your buildings. The fire department arrives. How will they know which apartment to go to?
In each building, there's a fire indicator panel, so that as soon as they came in, and of course the fire department is well aware of where these panels are located, they can look right at the indicator box and say, for example, if the fire is on the 19th floor, they can look right away and time isn't lost trying to find out where the fire is. And this is, all of these systems give the residents a sense of security, and they feel that they are in fact attaining their goal, that is, of living in a safe, secure environment. And by constantly having these safety and fire talks and having you come in and giving instructions and showing films and meeting with our staff and going over the fire procedure, it gives us all a sense of security. It makes me personally feel confident, so that when I'm on the floors giving fire instructions, I'm a sub-member of the fire department and I feel that I know what I'm talking about. On the other hand, your presence gives credibility to what I've said, so that when we meet as a group and then you come in and you re-emphasize what I say, then they feel, well, if the fire department says it's okay, then it is in fact okay.
Well, thank you very much for those platitudes, but you've got to feel doubly fortified with the fact that you have Mr. Flax, who has been named to the Mayor's Commission on Aging, and being a resident of one of your occupancies, I'm sure that the other senior citizens have to look up to you and be proud of the fact that you're a representative of them.
Well, I was one of the early ones to move in, and I don't know whether I was told to do it, but I took it upon myself. When the residents who moved in after me, I would show them the alarm box on the floor. I take them downstairs, show them the big panel in the first in the lobby, saying, "This is all for your help. Don't touch that panel. That's not for you to touch. But in case of an emergency, just pull that red box and you'll get help as soon as possible."
Very good. Very good. I'm glad to hear that. At this time, we would like to view another short segment of film depicting some of the behaviors that we would like to have reflected.
Learn from other people's mistakes, if we're lucky. Now, our minister's wife knows that bacon fat is flammable, but she didn't think about it till the whole bacon pan caught fire one morning. She screamed and was about to try to get it to the sink when our minister ran into the kitchen. He had more presence of mind than she did, poor soul. He grabbed the pan lid and just smothered the flames. Explained later to her that running water on the grease would have just spread the fire. Could have made the fire flare up and probably burned her, too.
It's especially tough if you're all by yourself. We do have to learn these things if we live alone. Now, I was trapped once in a smoky apartment by a fire across the hall. It was just after I lost my wife, Martha. But she was the one who gave me the advice that saved me. It was Martha who told me that it was the smoke that killed most people, especially older people. So when the smoke started coming in, I remembered her advice. I stuck towels and rags under the door. Cover your nose and mouth with a wet cloth, Martha had said, and crawl below the smoke. I did. Thank God I remembered. It saved my life.
Ms. Holmes, in retrospect, when you find one of your residents has been doing something that is contrary to good housekeeping or fire safety, what way do you not chastise them because they're not children, but do you correct these? How do you correct these procedures, such as careless smoking, or if you were to have a minor fire in a trash can? How do you correct these situations?
At Tower 1 Tower East, we pride ourselves on being a caring community, and I pride myself on dealing with individuals on a one-to-one basis, so that I would handle it by really a direct confrontation with the resident in the privacy of his or her apartment, bearing in mind that I'm dealing with one person, but I must keep in mind the safety of almost 400 other individuals, so that I would talk to the person and try to get whatever negative behavior, careless smoking, falling asleep while cooking, try to get to the bottom of that. One of the things that I also do while I'm inspecting is and having my fire safety talks on the floors, I inspect the wires of the appliances, because I've found over the years that people have favorite lamps with frayed wires, favorite toasters with frayed wires, and really try to impact upon them the idea that they're not only endangering themselves, but they are a part of a caring community, and that they're endangering the lives of 400 other people, and that's not right.
Absolutely, that's correct. Mr. Flax, one other thing that I would like to put to you, the appliances that we bring into the home, such as Mrs. Holmes has alluded to, is one thing. But what about the things that wives and men who are becoming vain in this day and age with regard to hairstyles bring in to play, such as hairsprays? They're very volatile cans in which they come in. If you were to run across someone that was misusing an aerosol can that could very well explode, I mean, how would you approach that person, and would they be receptive to your instruction?
Well, I would explain it to them, the dangers of fooling around with the aerosol cans. And also, we have in the two buildings, we have a chit-chat hour, which we get out, where the groups get together and just talk things over, things that are happening in the building. And that's where I would bring it up at a chit-chat hour, how we should handle, how they should handle these cans, how to dispose of them, these cans, the right way, instead of throwing them down into it. If there's any place, a fire extinguisher, place, don't throw them in there. Make sure you throw the can out entirely.
Good. Thank you very much, Ms. Holmes and Mr. Flax. It has been a very rewarding experience having you here to talk about fire safety for the elderly. I can only thank you for being here and congratulate you on your appointment to the Mayor's Commission on Aging, and wrap up the program by saying that if all the facilities in the city that dealt with senior citizens are as in tune as yours is, this would be a very fire-safe and fire-conscious city. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.